Okay. Nina, I can see your other screen there. I think we had said we can put questions in the chat. I also think anybody who wants to turn their camera on and raise their hand, we can do questions that way, because I think I can see what's happening on the margins while Nina is drawing.
I saw one question.
Go ahead, Mary.
From Bonnie in the chat. Should we start with that one, maybe?
Yes.
Bonnie says, are you working at all with Gordon Franke from the Urban Bee Lab, Nina?
Yeah, so Gordon is actually the person who got me connected to the Marin kind of community in the first place. And his taxonomist that would be identifying species is one of the first people that helped me also work with and start identifying my species of insects. But I haven't worked with him kind of since. So he was kind of very helpful in opening some doors. But I haven't checked in with him in the last while.
And then from Bonnie as well, are you available to present locally in Berkeley, and how can we contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually just type my, I'm sorry, but like I said, I'm sorry that the setup is a little silly for my, oh, nope, I didn't mean to do that.
I was just going to add to, just because of sort of our tech setup here, if you hover your mouse over Nina's drawing screen, there's 3 dots in the upper right, and you can click pin, and it will bring her drawing screen up as your primary screen as a viewer. That way you can see what she's doing while we're talking.
Yeah, and so I put my email in the chat. Yeah, I love doing local presentations. Like I said, people are really interested in bees, but at the same time know very little about them. So I love teaching about them, about their issues and everything that they're facing. So I'm definitely happy to give presentations for sure. I talk to beekeeping associations and conservation groups and stuff like that. So for sure, you can go ahead and email me there. And then, yeah, like I said, normally I am able to share the screen here, but instead I'm having to do kind of a silly setup with my phone, but it's actually showing up all right. And so this is how I do digital illustrations. I use this app called I'll just type it, Procreate. And it is it costs money, but like not that much in the grand scheme of things. Things like $15. It's an iPad app, and I just think it's super powerful, super simple at the same time. If you've ever tried to use Photoshop, I would call that not simple, and I get overwhelmed with all those different options. So this is a very powerful tool that, if anyone's curious, I can explain more about the literal features, but since everyone uses different tools, I won't go into it right now. But right now I have my reference image on the right of this Agapostemon sweat bee, who's a male. The females are all green here, but I can tell he's a male both by the number of antennal segments that he has, but also because of this species having sexual dimorphism where the two look different. And then I kind of had a little preliminary sketch at the bottom, and what's nice is you can have different layers, and I'm adding different layers and getting more and more refined in the detail. And I'll show kind of 2 different ways that I color things in, but for now, yeah. Are there any other questions, or I can keep mumbling about how
We have a question from a few minutes back from Lorraine, who says, in the Varroa illustration, is that the bee's proboscis?
Yes, that was taking a drink from the flower into the nectar. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Anybody else who has a question, please put it in the chat, and I'm going to ask a question. I fascinated by the conference you went to in Vancouver, and the sort of like the conscious relationship between science and art in a professional conference. And I am wondering, having come sort of from a science academic lab world and feeling like when you make a poster or you make a presentation, like their guidelines are sort of stringent. Like if you want to be taken seriously, and I might say, especially if you are a young woman in science, you follow the rules. So if you are in some other type of environment, a different conference, not this Vancouver one, do you find people receptive to your sort of different style of presenting your science, having this artistic? Because I feel like most people, maybe who aren't academic scientists, think that this is absolutely the best way to put science out there because you can see what you're talking about. But do you find like in academia, that's like, has it been a positive experience to incorporate your art into your science?
Overall positive. Yeah. I am unabashed when I add these things, and I don't particularly care for maintaining the quo in those regards. I think that the status quo is, sexist and all that
I
is
totally agree.
and everything. So I don't really ascribe to perpetuate it. So I just definitely do it. And I strongly believe that it helps communicate things. And I mostly have compliments, and especially from the disease ecology world, it's such like a new field and people are quite nice. No one has told me to my face that I'm doing this unprofessionally or something. But I'm also sitting in a space that's particularly not judgmental in that same way. But I could imagine other STEM fields feel in a type of way, but I would probably just keep on going no matter what. Because I think it's memorable and communicative. And so I haven't personally faced backlash, but I also think ecologists have people that enjoy natural history generally have more of an appreciation towards the artistic side of things.
Cool. I'm going to read another question here that says, according to Paul Stamets, there is a mushroom that is helpful in protecting bees from some infection. I don't remember the details. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I have heard about this, and I don't really know the mechanism by which that happens. I forget. I'm not sure if it's a virus. I'd be surprised if it was viral infections that they helped against, but there's lots of bacterial things and sort of ideas of how to supplement their diets. But that's a good point. I need to go looking into more of what exactly that mushroom is theoretically doing. And I overall think that because I study ecology, there's all these different, like, there's this virus and then there's like this thing that helps it, or there's this bacteria that is this thing that helps it. And I don't think that there's going to be any one size fit all solution of, something that they can consume, or, a medicine, or there's even the first bee vaccine that just came out. I'm hesitant to believe that will be the savior of the bees. And instead, a lot of these, and I didn't talk about it in this presentation, but sometimes I do, where a lot of these pathogens, they have condition dependent virulence, which means that how deadly the pathogen is depends in some part on the condition of the host, which means if the host is more stressed, the pathogen will be worse. And so what are we doing with climate change and everything? We're making a much more stressful environment. And so the same pathogens that they were infected with before could be causing a lot more harm just because of the stressors. So I just think that overall, like, yes, there can be this mushroom additive that can help bees, but probably would that help solitary bees in the same way? I don't know. You're not going to go and try to, seed all bees with these sorts of things. So it's, when I'm thinking of this solution scale of all of this, it's like we have to steward land in a way that can make bees resilient to the pathogens when they come, not if they come. And like, not every single, they're sick with this, therefore they need this. No, it's now they're sick with this and therefore they need this. There's too many insects, there's too much going on. And so instead, I think the focus there can be on providing land, non-fragmented land that can be a good, non-stressful place for them to be. Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to. Like, the diseases aren't going anywhere. There's not going to be any one size fits all solution, but helping them be less stressed is the overall solution, I think. But I will look more into the fungal thing. I forget.
And we did have reishi has been reishi has been submitted as the mushroom.
I love mushrooms. I'm about it. I would probably try my bees if I had them.
Does anybody else have more questions? I'm sort of mesmerized by watching you draw.
It's a little multitask, but I'm doing it. I am doing it.
You're doing it. It's great. I'm just making sure I have not missed any questions. Eleanor, I just saw you come on camera. Do you have a question?
I think I have I guess an almond question and a comment. I just wanted to say, I put it in the comments, but I wanted to say it out loud about how cool this presentation has been and how fun it is to watch you draw.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for your time. I heard that question about, are you, my interpretation, like, are you getting flack from people or support from people in the scientific community? And I experience it as so important to be able to show people what's going on, because people are operating in a lot of different languages and different literacy levels, and if we can make pictures and help people to make pictures, then people's understanding increases. And it's so imperative that that happen for everybody, like not just for kids but for adults too. So I think your art is really doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot.
Yeah. And here's my question. So I went to maybe 2 months ago, I was in the Good Earth grocery store up in the North Bay. And when I went to buy organic almonds, they have all of their products labeled about where they're from. And I think they only carry organic products, and their almonds were from Europe. And I was like, that's so weird that I'm in Northern California and almonds are coming in from Europe. And I wondered, what that says about, that crop and also the bees.
Yeah, I mean, almonds definitely are a thirsty, resource intensive crop. I'm shocked that they're also from Europe. Like I said, California makes 80% of the world's almonds. So it's kind of shocking that they would, like, I wonder what sort of choice went behind that to choose the one that's has to be imported versus local. But I mean, if you've heard any of the statistics of the fact that the Central Valley is sinking, like I think since the 1920s, it has sunk by 28 feet on average. And that's a severe tapping into the water table and over pumping groundwater, in part due to almonds and everything. They are better than they used to be. They require less water now, but overall they take a lot of water, and they're really tapping into that groundwater source. And yeah, they require a lot of bees because they bloom. They just bloomed actually in February, and there's just like no other native bees. There's no native bees out at that time. So they're completely dependent on animal pollination. The USDA recently made a new varietal of almond that doesn't require animal pollination. That's actually finally sticking. So I'm thinking that that would be hugely helpful to make them less reliant on at least that externality of pollination. But beekeepers, are really pretty much can make most of their money for the year just pollinating the almonds. And so they're really important for that. If anything, the almond control board is a little, if anybody that I'm worried about getting flack from, I think it's the almond associations overall. And that's just from how hard it's been to contact them in the first place, that they're kind of frosty, like, and cold in other ways. And then additionally, I don't know if this is just getting to my crowd versus others, but California has been trying to get different bumblebee species listed as endangered in the state so they can get state protection. And pretty much the reason that has halted and hasn't worked thus far is because of like almond people, like all the almond control board. I'm not saying the farmers or anything. The farmers that I work with are all lovely, and the beekeepers I work with are all lovely and like understand the problems, and like, they're just out there like making, the money that they need to support their families and everything. I'm not saying that anything with them that is the concern. It's just the the bigger, more zoomed out industrial agricultural level that I'm talking about. That is sort of the issue, and how much of they're an expensive crop. They're making a lot of money. And yeah, they're, actively trying to squash bees being listed as endangered by the state. So that's a little sus to me. But yeah, I'm not sure why they would not carry the almonds there. I wonder if they couldn't get a good supply of organic and then they had to look at imported ones. Who knows if it's just a personal choice. Yeah, no, there's no organic almonds to speak of. Yeah. The organic growers in California. So there you go. KO knows more than I. Yeah, that's not surprising that they're very covered in different pesticides and stuff like that, which is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I guess they weren't able to get a supply of organic almonds because they're harder to come by. So this is my little drawing so far of the little bee friend. I guess I'll bring it over here. So again, I'm using layers to go from more messy to more clean. And I'm like, you can't see my eyes, but I'm constantly like looking back and forth between the two of them. It's not perfect, and I would be trying to get better detail, but I also look at negative space here. So how does what I have here compare to like the negative space here? Like that kind of looks like the same shape, but in reality, this spot is too far up. Like I use negative shapes a lot to understand my proportions. Like the wings should also be coming out because it creates this triangle versus like how big this triangle is, so I'm using little tricks like that to be gauging proportions and everything. But overall, I also try to let it go and have fun at the same time as I'm doing these illustrations. So try to get it perfect, but then I'm just like, well, this is what we got. So we're gonna keep going.
I was just going to add a sort of a note here, hearing about all that you've done with kids. I think one of my kids has been coming home from science class, having done some scientific illustration at school. And I've done it a little bit with phytoplankton, so microscopy and drawing. And one of the things I have found over and over and over again, which I just love, is aside from the drawing skill, which kids sometimes say, I don't know how to draw, I can't make it look like yours, I can't make it look like the sample, but the skill of observation. You look at the thing a first time and you're like, well, the bee is black and yellow. But if somebody asks more specific questions like I think that skill in children in science is so important, that if you're trying to draw, you really have to look, and it's that looking that is almost more important, I think, than whatever else the science lesson is.
Yes.
So I love what you just said about the negative space, like just learning to see something that's in front of you in like a different perspective is so powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's why they're trying to, that probably in Berkeley your kids are getting the next generation science standards, which include more of creating a model that you're working off of and updating your model and using observational skills to have like a notebook and things like that. And boy, if I had learned science that way growing up, like I would have been
right.
But that's not how I learned science. And then it's like not even how people do science, like this is much, I see the kids like starting to do it now and everything. And I'm like, yes, this is lovely. I'm so happy because it's much more like real, to the science, and it's teaching them these skills, because there's some differences that like when you first start looking at these things, you're like, whoa, okay, they look identical, like there's no way things apart. But then like you kind of, you get the eyes to see it, you like start to be able to tell the differences. But it's just putting in that work, it's a study to observe them. It's a study to be intimately familiar with their different compositions and stuff.
Nina, Bonnie asks, do you take your own photos? Do you find the images online or from particular photographs?
A lot of the photographs that I had in the presentation were mine, but when I was doing the comparison of my drawing to the real life thing, those were mostly images from the internet, and it'll depend. I would say like a mix, with more so I use images. Like this is an image I found online, but I also like do try to take photographs, and because like sometimes you just like can't find the exact right thing, right? So it's a mix for sure, but I definitely do use images online, and I definitely do try to take my own photographs and have it be mine from the beginning to end, you know?
It is 6:10. I think I am going to wrap up the recording. And then Nina, if you have a few more minutes and people want to stay for a few more questions. But I just wanted to officially say thank you so much for this fantastic and interesting and eye-opening presentation. It was everything I could have hoped for such cool science, and then to see all your beautiful art was really moving. And we really appreciate you having been here, and everybody's questions have been wonderful. So thank you to all. This was a delight, and I am going to just stop the recording here, and then we can, if there are a few remaining questions, we can see if we've got a couple of minutes.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, don't get a chance to talk about, like, usually the illustrations are